All right, today I'm going to start showing you how to properly build a stiff slab cube. So I've got my slabs already stiffened overnight. This one I just rolled out and you can see that it just completely flops over. So if I'm trying to build with this, you can see what problems that would create if I'm trying to stand this up and it's flopping all over the place. So that one, freshly rolled again, needs to stiffen some. This one right here was rolled yesterday, stiffened in some newspaper, and you can see it's still flexible, but it doesn't just completely flop over. So I'll be able to build with that and not have it flop around. So first thing I'm going to do with this slab is cut it down to the exact size I need it. So remember when we cut a little bit bigger all the way around, scraped them smooth, and the reason we cut them a little bit bigger all the way around is because, you know, sometimes when we're storing them, they get a little beat up, so we can go back and cut that stuff off. So again, having them stiffen a little bit is a good thing. So making sure that my knife is straight up and down, not curved along, trying to follow that line there, straight up and down. I'm going to cut that off. If you feel like you need a little help cutting straight, you can always lay a ruler on there and follow along against your template and the ruler, but mostly you just need to worry about making sure that knife is straight up and down. So I'll go through, get all these cut down to the right size. Okay, I've got these two slabs cut down to size. So this clay here has stiffened a little bit, so we want to make sure we reclaim that. So poke a hole, add water, put that back in your bucket. So let's get started building. So I've got these two cut to the exact size. When I build, a couple things to note, I'm always going to put the wall on top of the base. Okay, so on top of the base, never beside the base. Okay, always on top. So other thing I'm always going to do is build on my project board and on a sheet of plastic so that it doesn't stick. So this wall is going to go right there. So we have to take a few steps in order to get this wall to be properly on there. First thing we're going to do is slip and score. So I'm going to get my scoring rib and I'm going to score the base slab, and I'm going to score this piece right here where those two go. And then I'm going to add some slip. Now when we slipped for our coil pot, we didn't want to use very much slip because that clay was already very wet. This clay has stiffened a little bit, so we're going to put a little bit of extra slip in there. A little extra slip on this one is going to be a good thing. Okay, so slip and score both pieces. Set that on there. Make sure I like where it's at. Okay, so that's steps 1 and 2. Step 3 is going to be to Frankenstein stitch the outside. So Frankenstein stitching is taking the pointy end of the wood knife and holding this in place, and I'm putting some big, deep stitches in there. We call these Frankenstein stitches because they're big and ugly. Okay, but what it's going to do is lock those two pieces of clay together. So once I do that, I'm going to go across there, and I should have some extra slip and stuff I can smear in to clean up those Frankenstein marks. Again, I'm not going to worry about that right now for my demo. Okay, so that's step 1, 2. So slip, score, Frankenstein the outside. On the inside, I'm going to make sure that I have a coil in here. So to put a coil in here, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to smear some slip into that corner. That will just ensure that once I put my coil in there, I don't end up with an air bubble. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing there. I'm going to roll out a little coil. And I'm not going to use the extruder because I just don't need to. And I'm not going to use those scrappy little pieces of clay that I cut off of my slabs because that's too stiff. I'm just going to use a little clay here and going to roll out a little coil. So I start in between my hands like so. Ooh, zoom out a little bit. Start in between my hands like this, and then I can roll it out on the table And a good coil for this is going to be about the thickness of a pencil. So I can always make an extra long one and trim it down to what I need. Okay, so there's my coil. Now we're going to put it into the corner there. So slide this where you can see, and I'm going to put it right there. Cut it off. And my goal here is to blend this coil in. So I'm going to kind of push it in the corner. You can see that slip kind of reacting behind there. That's good. It means I don't have any air bubbles in there. So I'm going to gently blend part of that coil down, and I'm going to gently blend part of that coil up. And you notice I'm holding the outside wall with this hand so that it doesn't slide off. So that's kind of similar to what we did when we were building our coil pot, right? And then come back in and smooth that out. It's going to be a lot easier to smooth this out now than it will be once we get all the rest of our sides on. Okay, so now I'm ready to add another side. So this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, so hold on tight and we'll make sure we get through it. Okay, so I'm ready for this wall. So again, cut this slab down to the exact size of my template. You can see that that spot right there where that little coil is kind of in the way right there. So I'm just going to nibble just a little bit of that out of there with my knife. And I'm going to set this on here. So first thing you'll notice right away is it doesn't fit. It hangs over. Because we have the thickness of this clay on this side, that makes this piece hang over. So we're not going to worry about that just yet, but we'll get that trimmed off and I'll show you how to do that. So now, again, the same things I did to the bottom of this one. Slip score, slip score. I have to also do in the corner of the wall here. Slip score, Frankenstein, put a coil in. All those things will apply to where it sits on the base and where two walls come together. So I'll show you that now. Again, be generous with the slip. And it's always best to do a corner first. You wouldn't want to add this wall on and then add this wall on because there's nothing really to hold those two together. So when you put a corner together, it really helps hold this all together and makes it a little more sturdy as you go. If you don't like applying slip with your finger, you can always use the wood knife, but push that in there real good. Make sure it's standing up nice and straight. So line it up. Now Frankenstein stitch the outside. So remember, we do the bottom. And now we're going to do the side as well. One additional thing I like to do is just put a little stitch kind of in the top right there. So again, we'll come back, smooth that out. We can add some slip in there to kind of get those little scratch marks in. Eventually, we don't want to see them at all, but starting off with, it's okay if we see them. All right, so again, on the inside, we're going to smear some slip in the corners. And that will make sure that we don't end up with an air bubble behind our coil. I'm going to roll out a nice little coil. I happen to have this one left over from the last time I rolled one. And I'm going to stuff it into the corner, holding it from the outside. Stuff it in the corner here, and then blend. So when I'm blending, again, I want to take part of it, push it down, and especially when I go to push this wall up here, make sure your hand's back here holding this up. Okay, again, it's always going to be easier to go back and smooth this out now rather than wait till later. So spend a little time making sure that's a nice round corner on the inside. Okay, so let's talk about what to do with this extra stuff. So we're definitely going to use the ruler for this one. And I know that if my ruler is sitting flat on the table like this, that it's standing straight up. So I'm going to sit that flat on the table right there, hold that, and I'm going to cut straight down. And that should, again, I've got the ruler lined up with the edge of the base there, so you can see what I managed to do there was cut that wall off perfect. So we'll continue that around. Every time we add these next walls, we're going to have to trim it in order to get it to fit. The last one will be the trickiest because we'll have a wall here, and we'll have to put that wall in between those two pieces. So we'll have to trim that one before we put it on to get it to the right size. Okay, I got the third wall on. I've got all the inside smoothed out pretty well. You can see I still need to trim this wall off. So again, back with the ruler, I'm going to line it up with the base. Make sure it's sitting square on the table. And then I can cut off the extra. Again, use your ruler, make sure you're cutting straight through. Okay. Again, cut off a little bit of that extra coil that was hanging out there. So last wall is the trickiest one because it's got to fit in between here. And again, I'm going to cut out just a little bit of this coil so that it's got a place to sit. So you might ask, well, you know, why do I put the coils in if I'm going to just have to cut a little bit of it out anyway? Again, we want to make sure that we are always taking all the steps to put things together first. So cutting this back out, a little piece of that, just is not a big hassle. All right, so now you can see we all started with 5x5s. If I sit this on the side, it's not tall enough, so we don't want that. I want to slide this over so that it's lined up with that wall, because what it's going to do is sit right inside of there. So I guess I could do this two ways. I could cut a little bit off of both sides. So I could line this up with my ruler and turn this so you can see what I'm doing. Line that up with that back wall. Cut straight down, making sure not to cut in my box as I get to the bottom there. So careful with that. And then I'll line the same thing up on this side and cut off here. So I'm lining up with that inside of that other wall. And again, try not to cut into my box. So I can mark that and lay it down if I wanted to. So now that should fit right inside of there. I've got to do just a little trimming on that though. So my goal is for all these walls to be standing up nice and straight. So how can I tell if they're standing up straight? Use my ruler, slide it up next to the side. You can see we don't see any gap between there, so I know that's 90 degrees standing up nice and straight. So the last one's the hardest one to get in because now I'm gonna have to fit my hand down in there. But again, slip score. Now I've got 3 walls or 3 edges to slip and score on, here, here, and here. Coil again at the bottom and up the side walls. Put a stitch here and here. Be careful when you're blending that coil in that you're not pushing this wall out, so hold it in place while you're blending. And then the very last thing we'll do is add the top. So go team.